Hi, I'm Lucas Gilkey with Hometown Hero, and today we're going to be talking about the opposition to hemp-derived cannabinoids, where it's coming from, why, and who would fight such wonderful products. Thank you for joining us, and we will dive into it right now. So we're going to start with the alcohol industry, and this is a bit of a weird one. So right now in multiple states, we've got alcohol interests, companies from the alcohol industry that are either trying to ban hemp-derived cannabinoids, they're trying to force us to go through alcohol distributors in those states, or they're trying to force the products to only be sold through liquor stores. Think about that for a second. A cannabis product, a hemp-derived cannabinoid, that largely has nothing to do with alcohol. I guess you could logically view it as a competing product because there's people like myself that would much prefer hemp-derived cannabinoids and cannabis over alcohol. That's my own sort of health beliefs, but I think I'm not the only one, and I think the alcohol industry knows this. So you've got a very well-funded, very well-established alcohol industry that is trying to curtail the growth of our industry by forcing it through their channels so they can actually pull money out of our industry in the process. That is wild. And we're only seeing this right now in a couple states, but I think it's important that people understand where the opposition is, where the opposition is coming from that we're seeing, and sort of what we're up against as we go through the lobbying efforts and all the different political endeavors that we're now engaged in and trying to protect hemp-derived cannabinoids, not just in Texas, but throughout the US. We're starting to see some really weird things pop up that we didn't fully expect, but now that sort of the larger industry, specifically alcohol, and we'll talk about another one next, but now that these industries are realizing that we could potentially be a threat, they're starting to change their tactics and get a little bit more aggressive. So there are multiple states right now where we are actively fighting the alcohol industry and the way that they are trying to force our products through their channels so they can control it and make money on it. Pretty wild stuff. The next group that we're getting a lot of opposition from at the next industry is pretty obvious, the big pharma industry. These are companies and an entire industry that really has specialized in pain relief. In my own personal experience, hemp-derived cannabinoids and cannabis products are absolutely phenomenal for pain relief. They allow me to do things physically that are very difficult for me to do without using cannabis or hemp-derived cannabinoid products. So the idea that Big Pharma feels threatened by our industry and what we're doing is pretty obvious. It's not complicated and it's not confusing. It's pretty obvious because they believe, my opinion is, they believe that we're going to potentially impact their sales. It's why you're seeing alcohol companies buy into big marijuana companies. I do believe at some point you probably will see, if we haven't already, that Big Pharma is starting to buy into marijuana. Now, I know Big Pharma is already working on a multitude of cannabis products, pills and different pain relievers based on cannabis products, and it makes sense. It's totally understandable. So it's an industry that wants to control what we do. And from the Big Pharma playbook that we've seen in the past, they tend to want to take things under the sort of the medical purview, focus on them that way, and that allows them to prevent anybody else from really interacting with them or selling them or making them or any of that stuff. Because once it's a medical product and it's truly intended for that, they sort of lump it into their own regulations and through the FDA and the way that they do things so that nobody else can really interact with it. So that is a danger zone for us, but luckily at this point, we've got amazing lobbyists in pretty much every state. We've got amazing federal lobbyists. Not only are we watching what these industries are trying to do and sort of their strategy, but we're actively fighting it. We are allied with a multitude of companies in our industry and actively fighting back and spending a lot of resources and actively fighting back in all these different states and at the federal level. So despite these industries and these companies really sort of targeting our industry, I have the most hope now that I've ever had before, because the people that have come together in this industry and the amount of resources that we now have to actively fight this stuff, it's a big deal. And so, I say this because I don't want this video to be a scare tactic or have everybody fearful at the end of it. It's really just an educational thing of, look, this is what we're seeing, this is what people are doing, and this is how we're actively fighting it. So the next group we're going to talk about is pretty fascinating, and it's something that I think a lot of people forget in sort of the context of this whole sort of evolving industry. and that is the prisons, the prison guard unions, the special interest groups that are around the prisons. There's a large portion of the U.S.'s prisoner population in the past has been from marijuana. So these are industries that have literal jobs, if not thousands and thousands of jobs that are created based on marijuana being illegal. So in not just marijuana, but also hemp. So now that hemp-derived cannabinoids are becoming legal, you're starting to see marijuana become legal as well. It's wild to think about, but the prisons and the prison guards are actually going to see an impact in their numbers based on these products and not being able to put people in jail anymore for these products. So we are seeing some different things happen in different states, and there's a variety of special interest groups. The prison ones are fascinating because of how much this could potentially impact them. And it's more so than most other special interest groups, because if you can't put people in jail for cannabis anymore, it's not necessarily a good thing for them. Most people don't know this. The U.S., I think, leads the world in the number of prisoners. We're talking about 2.1 million in 2023. We have more people in jail in the U.S. than China, and China's 4 times our size and population. It's pretty wild, and it's not even close. We're actually like quite a bit more in terms of prisoners. I think they were 1.69 in 2023, 1.69 million versus our 2.1 million for the same year. Think about that. We have a quarter of the population of China. That's wild. So it is, last time I did the research, I think, the prison system is actively going through, well, not the prison system, but the politicians are actively going through changing the laws and really trying to get people out of jail that have been put in jail for marijuana over the years. And so that's nice to see, but we're still seeing a fight back from the prison industry, because a lot of it is private. We're still seeing a fight back from that industry on what we're trying to do, because it will potentially impact their numbers and their jobs. One of the last things we're going to talk about today is sort of law enforcement and civil asset forfeiture. We sort of touched on this in the tax stamp video, where a variety of states have created marijuana tax stamps that you actually need to buy even though you're doing something illegal, so you don't get arrested or convicted or prosecuted for tax evasion as well. So civil asset forfeiture is where law enforcement can take personal property from you because of doing something illegal. Now, marijuana over the years, I don't know if anybody knows an exact number on this, but I'd be willing to bet it's billions and billions of dollars that have been confiscated from law enforcement from people regarding cannabis-related crimes. And I say cannabis because now it's not just marijuana, it's hemp-derived cannabinoids as well. And we're still hearing, every now and then it'll pop up where somebody does get arrested for hemp-derived cannabinoids, mistakenly with law enforcement thinking it's marijuana. It's happening less and less, which is a blessing. We love, and to all the law enforcement community out there, thank you for becoming educated on this. Thank you for what you do. We're huge supporters of law enforcement, but we do need to make sure that law enforcement is being properly educated on the laws in their states. And that's one of the disconnects that we saw in Texas very, very early on, and working with some of the local law enforcement here, was that they were contacting us because they weren't fully educated on what the laws were or how to really enforce them. So when the House bill passed in Texas that legalized hemp, we almost immediately got contacted by a law enforcement agency in the county that we're in Travis County, for us to explain to them what was going on, because they knew we were working with a bunch of lawyers, we're spending a bunch of money, dedicating a lot of resources to understanding this topic. So we were contacted by a local law enforcement agency to actually educate them and teach them what's going on. Now, I love that they reached out to us, and they were amazing guys, and we hit it off and gave them all the information they needed, and they were extremely grateful. But I don't like the fact that they aren't being given the proper education by their own agencies, and that they actually had to come to us to get it. Now, I'm very grateful for that, and I'm more than happy to educate any law enforcement community or people out there that need assistance in understanding these laws and what's going on. That's what we do, that's what we specialize in. But that being said, it is important that as the laws change and as things become more favorable to hemp products, which is happening in most states, it's very, very important that as these laws pass, especially after a legislative session, that the law enforcement agencies at the state level, at the city level, at the county level, that these groups are being given the proper education on those laws that passed. So that's a critical element of what is going on and sort of where we're going, and making sure that law enforcement's getting the education that they need, making sure that they have a vested interest in doing what's best for their community. Now, the hemp-derived cannabinoid products are going to impact civil asset forfeiture. It's just going to happen because now there are potentially less people to arrest, less people to prosecute. We as human beings tend to perceive that as a good thing, I believe, but there are certain special interest groups that would perceive that as a bad thing because it's going to curtail their access to money. It's going to reduce their access to capital, and anytime that happens, it's a bad thing. So we just have to be aware there are special interest groups that what we're doing impacts negatively and they aren't happy about. And so they're going to actively fight back just like we are in the legislative session with lobbyists, through the media. A lot of the negative stuff that you see in the news about hemp-derived cannabinoids right now, they're coming from special interest groups. Look at the source. Look at who they're citing as saying this stuff. It's very, very important to track that money and where it's coming from, especially to the media. So just know what you're reading and what you're seeing and understand the source of where it came from. That's very, very important. So in conclusion, I want to make it really clear. Look, we've got a lot of motivated industries, motivated companies, motivated individuals that are fighting against us. But I need to be very, very clear with everybody that this industry is in the best position it's ever been by far. We have the most resources, we have the most people, we have the most talent, we have the most lobbyists, we have the most politicians that are friendly with us, we have the most law enforcement that's friendly with us. So as an industry, we are very quickly becoming mature and becoming a large industry. I've heard some kind of wild numbers thrown out there about what people believe the sort of size of our revenue is. I've seen numbers in the media saying like $2 billion in terms of revenue for this industry. I believe it's substantially larger than that. I don't know if anybody knows the exact number, but knowing what I know about the industry and the companies in the industry, my guess is it's at least twice that size, if not bigger already. So this industry is very quickly maturing in the best way possible. That's what we need. We're also seeing companies from the marijuana industry come into this industry because they're fed up with the regulations, they're fed up with all the nonsense, and they understand that they can come into the hemp-derived cannabinoid industry and actually thrive as a business. It's wild, but here we are. So, I think it's very, very important that although we have these people and these companies and these industries that don't like us and that are actively fighting us, it's very important for us to embrace them and help them understand how we can potentially benefit them and work together. And so that's one of the big things that we're doing. Now, not everybody is going to be friendly with us and try and figure out how to work together. That's our intent. And if an industry wants to go to battle with us, then we will go to battle. It is what it is. We're here to stay, we're here to win, and we'll do whatever it takes. And luckily, we've got the team and the resources and the friends, the allies in the industry to really make this happen. And so, this video isn't about, just about the people that are trying to get rid of us as an industry. It's not meant to scare you. It's an educational video of these are the people, these are the industries, these are the companies that we're coming up against, and this is the strategy that we're taking to make sure that they can't get rid of us. So I have more hope and more faith in this industry and the people in it than I ever have before. And this legislative session is going to be amazing to watch and understand and see how it unfolds in all the different states. And it's really exciting to watch. And I'm excited to be able to bring to you guys what's going on. Again, the legislative session just started. We're still in the very beginning of it. And I know we're overdue for an update on the legislative session, especially here in Texas. But it is still very much in the beginning. There's still a lot of negotiation going on. There's still a lot of sort of, different elements that are happening in these sessions that need to get a little bit more vetted out and played out before we can really start bringing you information and talk to you about things. So that is coming. I know a lot of you are asking for that, so that is coming. And I just want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here and allowing us to give you some information on a up and coming and very fun industry and something that we're very proud to be a part of. And yeah. Thank you for joining us. Happy hunting, and we'll see you next week.